All right, welcome, folks. We're doing a little add-on special for you guys on this particular episode because my good friend Brian, should I say your full name? No, my good friend Brian. I don't think I've ever given you guys my full name. My good friend Brian. We worked together at the same school, and the whole time I was watching this episode, I kept thinking about you, and I was like, I want to pick Brian's brain about this episode. I feel like he would have so much to say. So, welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be the first official guest on at least the first separate episode. Have you guys had a guest before?
We've never had a guest. We were going to have our cousin Lee on because she's on Pix 11 News and does a bunch of stuff with wine. So she was going to talk about all the sulfites in Yellowtail, but she never ended up coming on. So welcome. Cheers to you being our first guest. What are we drinking?
We are drinking black cherry Mike's Hard Lemonade. It might not be available at your local stores, but please check it out if you can get it. It's kind of fancy.
So. Let's taste it.
All right.
That's delicious.
Wow, that's amazing. I would love to hear Lee's commentary on that.
I'm getting loud notes of hard black cherry lemonade.
We raided Mom's fridge when she was asleep. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting from these.
I'm getting it's 3 a.m. at a 7-Eleven.
It does kind of taste like just like juice. Like it almost tastes like a Capri Sun in a way.
This is dangerous. This is kind of scary. This is for children. Do you know what I mean?
Delicious.
It's It's like Skittles. Well, all right. So I want to get right into it because this is not going to last. We can't make this as long as as a real episode. So right away, what are your first impressions? This episode was called Mr. Joad. It was about the Grapes of Wrath.
Yes. So
me and Mr. Joad.
I am not as like, I have not seen all of Boy Meets World in a long time. My experience of it was kind of like watching one-off episodes of it randomly when it came on as a kid. But I've seen like a lot of it, right? And so I was a little bit, well, as I was watching, I was kind of like confused because I was like, I feel like Mr. Feeny is usually right in the show.
So you thought he was wrong in the show?
I thought he was very wrong in
Interesting.
the show. And
okay.
I felt myself getting a little annoyed because I was like, I'm not to say that Turner was completely right either. I think that he made some, I mean, ultimately it's a show. I don't think they're going to get into like deep educational theory between the two of them. I think both of them made mistakes, but I think that Feeny represents a viewpoint that I think is frustratingly rigid in education. And Turner also, we can talk about the issues with Turner's philosophy, but I think why I was kind of like, there was a lot of times where Feeny was doing things that I was like, I feel like you're embodying the teacher that just sticks to the rules for really no reason, not the teacher that has a philosophy behind their rules and is like, here's why. And usually that's who he is like, no, it seems like I'm doing this for no reason, but actually I do have a real reason.
Yeah.
In this case, I don't feel like he had a real good reason for what he was
doing.
Take
the test or die.
Or die, exactly.
That's not a good reason.
No. And you do what I say because you do what I say.
This is your warden speaking. Yeah. I mean, that was what was cool about this episode, I thought, was it showed how Feeny had a lot to learn from Turner. But Turner, and I want you to get into it, like he also was willing and open to hear, to kind of be convinced that Feeny's approach has merit. So what did you think was wrong with Turner's approach?
I with Turner's approach, it's more like, I think that when you're talking about, like, I think really what the thing is, there wasn't a lot of actual educational practice, which makes sense because again, it's TV show. But I think that Turner, like, if you're going to say we're not going to take a test, you can't just say, you just have to come in and talk. Like, that's really, I mean, we both know that's something that is really fun to do. And I've done it before and it's awesome. And I love being like, just read the chapter and come in and we'll talk about it. Unfortunately, to actually assess that, you have to have a sheet that says, here's what the discussion was, and here's what this person said, and here's how I understand how much they understand. Like, he has to have a plan. You can't just kind of do that. And if you do, then you're not really going to be able to assess what they've gained from the book. You might be able to assess whether or not they understand the book, which is awesome. But you won't necessarily be able to, like, use that information to talk about their development and their skill building and stuff like that, if that makes sense. Yeah.
That makes sense. My issue with look, the truth is I think we both lean more towards Turner, right? Like I'm not sitting here saying Feeny's right. But I was open to hearing more of Feeny because my issue with Turner's approach is it's extremely biased because it's in now it's it, the teacher is just deciding which students he thinks are good,
Yeah.
and all of your internal biases that you haven't unpacked, that's exactly where they can run rampant, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that by the end of the episode, Feeny and Turner are able to assess Corey and Sean, and they can't do that for every student in the
Yes.
class, right? Like that's just it's what
That's what I mean when I said that he doesn't formalize it, right? He needs to find a way to make this an effective measure. And again, like I'm not saying there's no space in the classroom for like, you guys read this thing, let's just talk about it. I do that a lot with like poetry. I'm not going to be like, okay, now answer all these questions that prove that you understood blah, 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 blah. Like we're reading this to have an experience, right? But if you are using a measure of assessment like a test, and then you're going to replace that with discussion, you can absolutely do that. I want teachers out there. You can do that. You just need to make it an assessment. You can't do it in a totally freeform way because exactly what you're saying happens, right? Is like then the teacher just it not only affects what grade are they getting. Like first of all, how are you going to grade that? We have to give grades. I know I hate them. We all hate them, but it's something that exists. Especially, it sounds like in this school, he's not going to be able to say, "Oh, I didn't give them a grade," right? So you have to be able to grade it, and in order to be able to grade it fairly and like objectively, you need to have criteria and you need to have a procedure for understanding what the student knows. And I like that's why discussion, like that's why we have things like Socratic seminars and like anticipation guides, pre-written discussion questions, things like that, because you have to be able to track the discussion in a way that is both accurate and also inclusive, honestly, because like
inclusive.
it's not inclusive to have one student leading this whole charge and all the other students joining in, and then
I can't tell you how many times I've had students in my class that are silent, that I go to another teacher's class and I'm like, oh my God, I've never heard that kid speak. And they're talking up a storm in that other teacher's class, and vice versa. I have students that talk and are themselves in my class in this way that they just aren't in science or whatever,
Yep.
So you can't, it's not fair because and even in observing, like back when I was in grad school and I was observing classes, I remember this teacher that I was observing was having a one-on-one conversation basically with one student in the class who was on his level and got where he was, it was like him and Minkus basically just shooting the shit. And it like that kid's going to get an A, but and I might cut this, but and then I took over his class and that student didn't talk as much when I was the teacher. And there was this other student who actually had a disability and was always like on his computer and doing something and was sort of like always sort of like multitasking. And that student started raising his hand. And I remember the teacher that I took over for a few days was like, that kid doesn't talk in my class. Like it's crazy to see this whole total other side of him. And his mom even emailed me and was like, oh my God, he like loves you. And I was like, it has nothing to do with me. It's just people's energies vibe differently, right? Like it's just a matter of like magnetism and coming together and energies and whatever. And I do believe that. I think like we even ourselves have the ability to be like more talkative or less talkative around different people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think it's a really unfair way to assess students.
I also think if you're talking about the conversation of like changing the way that we assess, changing the way that we look at what does somebody know, right? Like tests are the classic, right? If you can take a test about it, you know it. Now, I think we both know, and I think that like an educational, if you're looking into the field of education right now and over the last like 10 years, I think you know that if somebody can take a test on something, that doesn't mean that they know it. And B, if somebody can't take a test on something, that doesn't mean that they don't know it, right? It is a way to do it, and it's great. It can be a useful tool, but it is a tool. It's not the end all be all, which is why I was frustrated with Feeny when he was like, this is the, like, no, you don't understand. If you don't do a test, then what are you even doing? What's the point? What's the point of teaching them if you're not going to do a test? It's like, what? What do you mean?
I didn't see it as that. I saw it as they're not going to do the work. If they don't have a test, they will not have any motivation to read this novel.
Yeah. Now that is, I think, on the other hand, so this is part of what, again, going back to what I think was wrong with Turner. Those kids are not reading that book.
What?
Those kids are not reading that.
Seventh graders aren't reading a 600-page John Steinbeck novel?
Just based on one conversation where he says you won't have to take a test if you read the book. I think the writers are overestimating the extent to which kids dread tests. I do think there's a lot of kids that dread tests, not because they can't and didn't do the work, but because they're stressed about the test. There are also a lot of kids that don't like tests because they didn't do the work. They don't want to take a test on it and fail it. Right. So I think, like, if I'm being totally realistic, if, again, and this is without the formalized assessment, if you just had like hey, we're not going to take a test, just read it and we'll talk about it tomorrow. I think, like, in a class where the kids really like you and respond to your teaching style, maybe, how big, 15 kids in that class, maybe 6 or 7 of them are going to read the book. Maybe, if that's all you do. Now, if you offer like hey, so like, we're not going to take a test, don't worry, but we're going to do a short, like, you're going to end up doing a presentation about it, or we're going to write about it later on, or we're going to do a formal Socratic seminar about it, right? Then your odds go way up. A lot of them will read the book.
Yeah.
But just the loose, like, oh, you guys don't want to take a test? All right, we won't take a test as long as you read the book.
Yeah.
I do think it's awesome when you do it, you that, like, phenomenon of having the Seans and the Corys that, like, actually do it and then, like, respond to it and talk to you, like, that is so real.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that, we talk about a lot is you are teaching a class of 10, 20, 30 kids. You're not teaching a class of 4 kids. So if you're doing something that's really working for 4 kids and it's not working for the rest of the class, it doesn't really matter how well it's working for those 4 kids. Like, find ways to incorporate that for those 4 kids, but those 4 kids are not the only 4 kids in the class.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's been my point from the beginning. And that's usually how Turner's method ends up. There's like the few kids that are really comfortable talking and being extroverted and, having discussions. And then most kids end up being the audience for those kids.
Yes.
There are a lot of students who do better when it's just them and a piece of paper and a pencil, because they can really figure out what they're trying to say and write it down and plan it. And I was that kind of student. I actually, surprisingly, even though I have a podcast now and I'm very talkative and I'm a teacher and blah, 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 that all kind of came later for me. I was a really quiet student, actually. I listened a lot more than I spoke.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think, like, I mean, we're getting, totally off on a tangent here, but, like, we've had this conversation before. Like, my philosophy is, like, I don't really do tests because I, as a teacher, don't really know how to make sense of them in an English class. I think the way that I run my class, I'm doing writing over time. That's kind of how I do. Is, like, I want to see them start a piece, week 1, work on it over week 1, come back to it week 2, work on it again, get feedback, and, like, produce something, right? So, like, I don't typically do long form tests, but not because I'm like, I don't think they're good, or I don't like, it's because that's just not how I they're not going to assess what I'm trying to do. Kind of, you know what I mean? And I think that's cool. And also, doing tests is fine, right? You just need to match what you're doing to what your students need, what you want to achieve, and most importantly, I think, how you're approaching the content. Because if your approach to the content doesn't match the assessment, you're going to have a really difficult time. Like, there's a way for him to do. I mean, he could have done a project about unionizing where they said, what's something you hate about the school? Form a union and, like, cause a problem about it. Right?
We need to get to that too.
Well, yes.
Yeah, yes. I want to hear your thoughts. But I will just say on this note, I am a teacher that gives tests, and Brian kind of isn't. Yes. So that's kind of why I wanted to have this conversation. Ultimately, I think we're both, we both see both sides, right? Yeah. And for me, I believe in the Socratic seminar discussion method throughout the semester, and then it ends in a test. So there's sort of both happening. Yeah. I think all the learning happens in discussion, and all the excitement and getting into the book happens. And ideally what I want is for them to forget that there's a test and just get into the book. And then when there is a test, they're super confident going into it because they're like, I know the book. I read it. I talked about it. Like, it's in me, And that was the irony for me of the situation at the end of the episode. Like, Corey and Sean would have done a really good job on the test. And you know, if they had taken the test instead of forming a union and basically boycotting the test, they would have done well.
Yeah, but I kind of get if we want to get into the union, I actually I get it, honestly.
Go ahead, explain.
Because I think that it was I as a student, like if you don't care and you're like whatever, I just want to get a grade, like whatever, we're gonna do it, fine. Then you get handed that test when Turner suddenly goes, hey, you're gonna take the test, and you go, what? I thought we were gonna have tests. All right, whatever, like I'll take it, right? I think they felt, obviously exaggerated, right? But they felt a sense of injustice.
Yes.
That I was like, I kind of
you
like,
lied to us.
Yeah, and I kind of get it. Like, I don't think I would have cared enough about it at the time when I was their age. I don't know that most kids would. I think they would just kind of complain. But I kind of understand. Like, yeah, they would have just done well on the test, but I don't think that's. I think that to me, it's kind of, I would almost be kind of like, oh, well, it's not like about that. Like, it's cool that they actually care about this on a bigger level. It's not just we want to complain about taking a test. It's not just okay, whatever, I'll take the test. It's like you are doing something wrong. Like this is wrong because you told us one thing. Now you've lied. And I know as a teacher, like that happens all the time. And sometimes you just got to eat it and be like, listen, I know I told you that, but sorry. But you can't like.
Turns out I can't do that.
You kind of have to like I give them some credit for like saying like, yeah, but like you told us you weren't going to do that. And like,
right.
You know, and I mean, I don't know. I think to an extent, I also, sorry, we'll come back, but the little speech they get at the end, I think was horrific.
Okay, what was that?
When they're basically like, what have you learned from this little endeavor? Oh, that you're kids and you know nothing and you're not labor like people that like went through the grapes of wrath.
Okay.
And you can't do stuff like this. I was like,
no. Okay.
Why?
This is because this is how I interpret this episode. You're coddled. You're safe in this school. You're in a situation that is cushy and you're getting greedy now. Like, you know, because I think that's the point. The writers included this scene. It's a give a mouse a cookie situation, right? The writers included the scene where now Corey's in there going, we want lobster and we want steak and no more macaroni, right? So it's this idea of like everything is relative and you think that this is this huge injustice that you have to take tests. But at the end of the day, this is a privilege that you get to be here in this school. And the other option for you is the real world, which that's why I loved when Alan came in and he was like, or you take another test and it's get a job or starve. Right. And so if your job right now is to like read books and write things down about them, like the other option for you is survival on the streets. Mm-hmm. So you want to do that? Like, well, I get that a little.
But like I think that it undercuts the lesson. Like if you like, in a way, I totally agree with you, right? I think if they're like saying to a certain extent, like they do need to accept like this is the way it is and acknowledging the value of the education they're getting, of course, right? But I do think that like the way you're communicating to them, like, yeah, the things you're concerned about, like it essentially communicated the things you're concerned about don't matter and you shouldn't care about them. And like the fact that you think this is a big deal is ridiculous. And like, I hear what you're saying.
Well, just because, especially in the context of you just read The Grapes of Wrath, these people are starving. Sure. They're getting abused by police officers. They're they're striking because they have nothing to lose.
I completely understand that. But if to me, what I didn't like about it is it felt like you like disincentivizing them from connecting themselves to the text. Like what I was writing down when I was reading, and then Feeny at the end was like, turns out they did. So he was like, okay, whatever. But yeah, I was writing down like you're telling them like, don't put yourself in the text you read. Don't connect it to your life. Don't run it through the lens of whatever. This is different from you. And when you're trying to like take the ideas and the universal truths and the principles that you're pulling from this text, don't do that. You're wrong. And I was like, well, then what's the point? Why are you reading this book?
To learn about other people. There's windows and there's doors.
Sure.
No, it's mirrors and windows. What is
windows it? Windows and doors. Yeah. Wait. Mirrors and windows.
Mirrors and windows. You don't know what we're talking about. As we've both been to grad school, we talk about this concept of windows and mirrors, where basically books can be windows that you look through to look into other people's lives, or mirrors that shine back your own life back at you. So basically, I think what what Turner was trying to do was say, look, this isn't a mirror. This is a window. You're looking at what life is like for migrant workers, for other people that are suffering.
Yeah.
This is not your story. You are in a cushy situation. You're a kid. It's your job to go to school. You sleep in a bed with rocket ships on your sheets. Like, everything's handed to you. Like, start to have a little gratitude, you know?
Sure, I agree. I didn't. Like I said, what I didn't like was the sort of like it felt to me as if he was saying like you're feeling a strong connection to this text based on what's going on in your life, and actually you're wrong. You shouldn't be feeling that. And I'm like, we want our kids to connect to texts,
but we don't.
And
I don't want them to read something like, you know, like I don't want them to read Between the World and Me and be like, I kind of get what it's like to be black in this world, and they're not. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like,
sure,
no,
but
this is what it's like for these people. You know,
but
like
I don't necessarily think
obviously
that
not for
that's
my
what
black
they're
students.
saying. I'm saying I think that there's what they're connecting to is injustice. Like it's a bigger principle, right?
Yes.
And I do completely understand. Like obviously, if like they shouldn't be going to like this is what I mean. The extremity of their protest is not equal to the extremity of what happens in the Grapes of Wrath. You know what I mean? If it was, then I'd be like, this is crazy. What are you talking about? But I think that there is this underlying kernel of like what they took from the book was that there is injustice in power structures. And when people are just telling you, right, and it's kind of like telling the kid, well, you know, school is just the one power, like the kind of power structure you just have to listen to. So just do it. Like that's kind of the whole point, I think, of what they were pushing against. And I think that like, that's okay. Like I get at some point, like we do have to say, you have to do this, you have to do that. Completely get it. I don't think it's fair to say, and stop complaining about it. Get over it. You know what I mean? Like,
well, and stop boycotting it. It's not complaining. Like they're allowed to complain. It's just, okay, if you want to opt out of the system, you may. Here is your other option. Streets.
But this is what I'm saying. I agree with you if he didn't cast the first stone. If he didn't say, it's not just, I don't want to take tests, so I'm boycotting out of nowhere.
It's you lied to us.
You lied to us.
Yeah.
That's the injustice. The injustice isn't tests exist. I mean, maybe that's an injustice for some people, but I don't think that's what they're reacting to. I think they're reacting to, you lied to us. And now we have this other guy, Feeny, who's going like, tests are the most, you have to do tests. You have to do it. You have to do it. And no explanation. Like they are never explained to why they have to take the test.
Yeah.
Clearly, there's no explanation of like why I think this is important.
Test or die.
It's just do
I
it.
laughed so hard.
Right?
Like,
yeah.
It was like, y'all are delicate little adolescent flowers. So I'm going to say this with utmost sensitivity.
Yeah. And
test or die.
Do that all the time with my kids when I'm like, hey, unfortunately, you have to get over it. We're doing this. Right. But I think that like if this is the situation, if it's like, hey, like we agreed on this and this is how, I mean, that's the other thing too, is like a lot of these kids, again, it's minor, but a lot of these kids could have read the book not as if they were going to be tested on it tomorrow. Right. You know what I mean? Like that's not necessarily equivalent. Right?
So that's how we get into good tests versus bad tests, because I do believe that there are bad tests and good tests. Good tests test them on the big ideas, you know, and bad tests are too concerned with the nitty gritty details.
I think the detail, like trying to remember who is this person, what this, you know, tertiary character, what was their name and what was their job. It's like, is that what you were focused on when you were reading this book? I wasn't. I will admit
I've asked those questions just to make sure that they're reading it.
I think you can say if you give them a small section, right? If you're like, hey guys, read chapter 1 and 2 tomorrow.
That's what I've done.
And then tomorrow you're going to come in and have a quiz.
Like,
I mean, even then I'm kind of like,
I know it's not fair. It's mean. I do it only sometimes.
Like even then I'll do like something like that kind of like leads them to the answer if they read the book. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it doesn't have to be just off memory. It can be like, you know, this person was talking to blank.
Remember that scene?
This, and then, when they talked about this, like trying to jog it a little bit rather than just like, who was this person?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, you know.
Right.
But no, but I do think that like there is something to be said for like, and that's why I mean, when we're talking about assessment, that's why I lean towards other things. Yeah. Because I think the margin for error is so like tiny on a test. Is like you can have a test question that can totally give you a misunderstanding of what a student understands about a book.
Yeah.
And the only time you have to get it is in that half hour when they're taking the test.
Right.
You can't go back and be like, oh wait, they actually did understand it, but they just didn't understand the question, or they
Right.
didn't answer in the moment, they didn't think about it right.
You can.
I mean, you
I've
can,
done it.
but think about what you were saying for like if you do that for one kid versus like
No,
that
but I
might
would
be
do
the
it for
case.
everyone.
But I'm
I
saying,
let them come up and argue answers with me all the time. And if I discover in their argument, like, oh, they actually really read it and they have an argument for why they put this answer, I'll give them the points back.
but I'm saying, what if they put an answer that you're like, I still don't think the answer works, but they're talking to you in a way that shows you that they understand the book.
I'll give them points back.
Okay.
I'm like not just because I give them a test doesn't mean I'm like Feeny. I'm crazy. Like
No,
it's just a place for me to start. You know, and my favorite types of questions are like I give them quotes and I ask them which character said them. Because I feel like and I choose like I think I'm smart about like which quotes I choose. Like the only person that could possibly say this is like, you know, this character. So yeah, like Lady Macbeth. Like when we do Macbeth, I'll be like, who said these things?
But those are also like you're talking about those in class. Like if you were doing Macbeth, you're giving them like you're talking about like
I'm not
the flower on. You know what I mean? You're gonna talk about those quotes in the context.
Exactly.
And if they don't know that at that point, it's
like,
okay, you just weren't paying attention in class.
Exactly. Like we talked about this for 45 minutes, man. Like
we did a whole week on this speech. Like what are you talking about?
Exactly.
The other thing, I mean, the other conversation I kind of wanted to get into is about like the relationship between the two of them, Turner and Feeny.
Yeah.
And the conversations they're having, because like, I mean, I'm a fourth year teacher. I started teaching when I was like 23, and the tone that Feeny has to Turner is not unfamiliar to me. I will say I'm lucky to work in a place where people don't speak to me that way very often, but when it does happen, it is very frustrating. I've had people speak to me that way where they're saying like, well, you know, you don't know what you're doing, kind of. Not you don't know what you're doing. It's never that clear. It's like, huh, okay. Well, I just think this. Well, I just think this. Well, I just think this. And it's not really a conversation. You know, it's really them being like, really? You're doing that? Like, okay, whatever. And it's like, hey, like, I think it's amazing that you've been teaching longer than me, and I think it's great, and I have a lot to learn from you. But don't just assume that I'm making mistakes and I don't know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? And I mean, listen, Turner doesn't do himself any favors by being like, I ride my motorcycle and wear my leather jacket and literally walk around with my helmet all the time for no reason. Also, sorry, just to get to the side plot.
Coming to the house.
Who was this Blanche Dubois ass girl that just came up to wherever they live from, like
Georgia,
Louisiana or Georgia or whatever it is? Like, I was like, who?
Desiree.
Excuse me, what are you saying? Right? She was
in the last episode, so she
I
had
was
her
like,
introduction.
the way you're talking is crazy. Right now. Just the accent,
straight off Broadway.
I was like, oh my god.
Yeah,
but. No, I think that, like, I mean, was that something that you dealt with? Like people being like, when you were a new teacher, being like,
I had a very weird path to where I am now. I taught abroad in South Korea, and I was among all teachers my age, and I was the first teacher that campus hired. So like there was literally, I was the oldest teacher. I'm like only ever used to being the oldest teacher in a space. So, but I did. I had the only other teacher they hired was this guy named Nick who became my mentor. I owe him so much. He whipped me into, I mean, he kind of like raised me. I was a child when I first started teaching, and he was a jerk in a way that really made me a better person. Like it was like military school. Like he was just like, get it together.
yeah,
you know, in a way I needed.
I would say that the hallmark of the teaching profession is imposter syndrome. Like, do I know what I'm doing? Do I deserve to be here? Are the kids learning anything from me? Am I an idiot who just stands up and talks and does nothing? Like, what am I? Am I doing anything?
Yep.
And
I still think this every day.
I think that I think I will say, like, good teachers probably think that a lot.
Yeah.
Because I think that we can get into the whole, but like, I think that like, as soon as you get into a place where you're like, yeah, I'm really good at this and this is easy and blah, 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 you've shipped yourself off to like la la land from teaching. You have to stay. There's no like, let rest on your laurels. You have to stay on top of it. Even so far as like, I teach, like, I think there's maybe 2 books that I've taught every single year, and every other year I've changed everything else I do.
Yeah.
Because I just need to like do different things. I need to change. I need to adapt, or else I'm going to just walk in. All right, guys, do this, leave.
Right.
Right. So like, I think that's part of where it comes from. Is like, I think imposter syndrome is a sign of you're doing a good job
Right.
to me. But the reality is that it's hard. And it gets very much exacerbated when you are faced with a situation where somebody's kind of just like, I don't know, invalidating a choice you made or treating you like, rather than like a fellow professional who's doing something different, treating you as like, oh, you're doing like, ooh, that's not good. You're not giving a test. Whoa, like that's really bad. Then you start to be like, wait, why? What? Am I crazy? Like, am I wrong? Do I know what I'm doing? Like you get sent down one of those spirals. And I think that it's tough for new teachers to deal with that.
It is, but every school benefits from having new teachers because they shake things up. Turner's doing really cool, radical things, and I love how he seemed confident. I'm sure he, if he was a real person, he'd be, on the inside freaking out because, like, you see someone like Feeny, he just walks around like he knows what he's doing, and he critiques you, and you're like, oh my god, I'm wrong. But I love that he challenges him, and he's like, I don't think that's radical thinking. Like, if they know what they're doing, then why do I need to give them a test?
But I think I read, I mean, again, maybe this is projection, but I read anxiety in him a little bit. Like I read like when he's like, really? Like when he's having that conversation, the internal, I mean, he's not going to be in front of Feeny like, oh my God, what? Like really? But I don't do that either. But internally he's like, like, wait a minute. Like,
you're right.
It throws him off. And then I really saw it when he was giving them the test.
Yeah.
And you can see he's conflicted. He's like, he doesn't even really know what to say. He's like, I don't like, I know I said I wouldn't, but like, don't think of it as he's shaken, I think, a little bit. And I think that that's like not, you need to have moments like you also as a new teacher shouldn't be like 100% of the time, I know what I'm doing and I'm great and everything's amazing. But I think you do that enough on your own. You can give feedback to a new teacher in a way that isn't like, and I'll also admit, I've done that to people. I've been like, wait, what?
What are you doing?
And then I'm like, oh, like my girlfriend's a teacher and she teaches middle school. And I was looking at her questions.
She's newer than him, by the way.
Newer than me.
It's her first year.
She started teaching after I did. And I looked at one of her questions, her questions for a scene of Romeo and Juliet. And I said, and these are kind of like just like content questions. Like, I mean, like, do you want to maybe ask like something like this? And I gave her like a thematic question, and she was like, I don't think they're going to be able to answer that. And I was like, you don't think they'll be able to? Like, I wasn't thinking. I'm thinking like, okay, we're talking on the same. Like,
yeah.
And then I saw in real time, she was like, and I was like, no, I'm sorry. I'm like, wait.
Yeah.
Like, I did it. I did exactly what people do to me that drives me crazy, and I didn't mean to, right? But I was like,
I do it too.
Yeah, and it's you gotta catch it. But I think it's very much exaggerated when you have older teachers and younger teachers, because I think there's always just, I don't know why, like, generational conflict is something that is becoming such a factor in like the world,
because
more.
The gaps between the generations are widening. But we don't have to have that whole conversation now. I wanted to ask you about the portrayal of women in this episode. In terms of, the women, like Eric's girlfriend, she's very much like a cartoon of a woman, right? And then the way that Jason talks to Amy, like Amy, I love Amy. I think she's like a cool, interesting, like 3D mom, and she's right. But at the same time, like Jason comes in and he's like, oh man, like, weren't you on Baywatch? And she's like, I'm a little mature for that. And he's like, you'd be the one on like Next Generation Baywatch. Like, there's a lot of sexualizing women, and I just wanted to know your thoughts.
I mean, his mom called him whipped. Did you hear that? I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
God.
I know.
Like, I don't know. I think that like,
and he was like, she doesn't control me, I control her.
Yeah.
Like, there was
really weird. I don't know. I think that the portrayal of the girlfriend is like, I mean, I think they're trying to, my thought would be like, they're saying, oh, this is the high school. They're leaning into, oh, but it's high school. It's like just high school, people in high school. But I think they don't realize that they're like saying, this is what girls are like in high school. And like, that's not a good thing to say about them, I think I don't know. I didn't read as much of the stuff with Amy that you were talking about. Like I thought like her being like the one that's like trying to like I almost thought it was like the fact that his mom knew that he was like obsessed with this girl and was doing everything. I was like, this is interesting to me because this is not the kind of relationship that I would expect. I mean, I know it's the kind of relationship they have in the show.
Yeah.
But I don't think most parents I don't think that's how most parents would react. I think most parents would be like,
I thought it was very realistic of her to
really?
be like, what are you doing? Like, stop letting her, because she was totally controlling him and he was completely bending over backwards for her.
I don't think it would be, the parent would know that much. You know what I mean? Like I would be surprised if
he's
a
like
high
rushing
schooler's
out the door, not eating breakfast. Yeah.
If a high schooler's parent was that aware of what was going on in their life, especially if it was like they've been dating for like 2 weeks or something like that, I'd be kind of surprised. I mean, it'd be good. I'd be like, this is a very attentive parent. But I was kind of like, wow, that's interesting. Like I would not have like expected. And also his reaction was very different than my reaction would be if my mom was like, stop hanging out with this girl. I'd be like, what are you talking about? Leave me alone.
That is something that Jules and I have consistently said, that we do love the way this family feels really dialed into each other. Every member of the family is very dialed into the other person. And
totally.
Yeah. There's like a scene. I don't know if you've been like listening, but there's an earlier season 1, there was an episode where Amy was cheating. She wasn't really cheating. They thought she was cheating. And when it comes out that she wasn't, she says to Corey, like, you know my heart and you know my mind. Like, why would you ever think that I would be cheating? And like, we loved that part. So we were like, I didn't know my mom's heart and mind.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Is like, it's so unfamiliar to me.
Yeah.
To like for the mom to be like locked in on what he's doing, or like, I don't know. I was like, that's interesting. I would have I would have been in and out in high school, and it would have been like, I think it would have been like, maybe if it had been like 3 or 4 months, I think my mom would be like, where are you going all the time? I was like, oh, all right. Also, like, how is he a senior? How's he driving?
He's 16.
It was just like the 90s, and people were allowed to drive.
He's, I think, a sophomore.
And he's driving on his own?
That's a really good point. I mean, didn't you get your license at 16?
I got my permit at 16. I couldn't actually drive by myself until I was 17. And then it was like the daytime hours thing, right? Where you're like, you have to drive. You can only drive with like one other person in the car or something like that. You can only drive from like 8 o'clock to 9 p.m. or something like that. And if you drive after that, you're like technically out of bounds.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't think I followed those rules because I don't think I've ever heard of those rules. Oh God. That's interesting. I thought I got my license at 16. No?
No, I got my permit at 16. You had to drive. You could drive with an adult.
Okay.
And then after you got you had to have a certain amount of driving hours. And then on your 17th birthday, you could get your like junior license, which is when you were allowed to drive by yourself. But like I said, only during certain hours, and you're only allowed to have a certain amount of people in the car.
This was the early 90s. Something tells me the law was different.
Was probably different, yeah.
And even if it wasn't, I feel like then the show might be falling into that thing where all the writers are old.
Yeah, you just
so they're like,
it.
Yeah, they're like writing for the reality that was the reality when they were kids.
With sitcoms, I would just like accept. I'm like, okay, sure.
All right. Do you have any final thoughts about the episode?
Yeah, I think just like I said, I think that like it's an interesting conflict. I found myself not being with Feeny, which I feel like I usually am like, yeah, I'm with you. I felt myself being like, I wish I had seen more of his personal reflection on himself, because I think the 3 lines he gives Turner at the end weren't enough for me to be like, you learned something too. I was like, maybe you should learn a little more.
It's a 22-minute episode.
Exactly. And there was all the intercuts with Desiree. But yeah, I mean, I think like I said, I think that like considering assessment as a tool rather than the end product of education is a really important thing. And considering when you're approaching like creating whatever an assessment, it needs to be based on aligned with like what you've done and what you're expecting and what you want to see, right?
Yeah.
And I think in that sense, I don't think either of them really did a great job.
Yeah,
they could have done better.
Yeah. Agreed. I liked Turner's approach more. But at the end of the day, I do think an assessment would have kind of been a good equalizer. It would have also just kind of made sure that we got those kids in the corner who weren't speaking in class to also show what they know.
Yeah.
And so in the end, like I believe all debates are solved. You need a little bit of both sides, right? So Turner's method plus Feeney's method equals, some kind of happy medium where everyone's grade is sort of some average between the two.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think that's fair. And like, even if it's not a test, like some other form of assessment, like formalized assessment,
Write
not
something.
just like talk to me about the book. Right.
Yeah.
Or unless you want to set up individual conferences with every student in the thing so they
Which
can talk
no
to you
one
about
has
it
time
alone,
for.
which nobody has time.
But also not every kid expresses themselves verbally as well.
And
right?
this is why we need to talk about student choice and why student choice is really important.
Student choice is really important. I agree. All right. Thank you so much, Brian.
Of course. Thanks
This
for
was
having
so
me.
fun. It took us the amount of time it takes to drink one Mike's Hard Lemonade.
Mike's Hard Lemonade.
Cheers. Bye.